constructing a coordinate plane. So we're going to investigate different ways of creating a coordinate plane. Today's goals, when given points to plot, I can construct a coordinate plane with an appropriate scale and pair of axes. So make sure you have today's date, your I can, and you're ready to go. English winter. So we've got a data table here of time and hours afternoon and the temperature in Celsius. So if you remember your weather stuff from 5th grade, you should notice kind of some trends here with as far as what the temperature does throughout the day. So which of these would make the most sense to use for this? I think that we can agree pretty quickly that A is not going to work. Why is that? Well, we've got some negative temperatures here, right? And A doesn't have any negative temperatures, so we couldn't use it. So then it's a matter of whether B or C makes more sense. Well, since everything stays in the single digits, and it looks as though B has each line labeled as a single digit, B is going to probably make more sense as far as why it's going to work better, because you're going to be able to plot more easily. Now, could you use C? Of course you could. But given that each line is worth 10 whole, 10 hours, 10 degrees in temperature, and again, here we're only going, these are all staying in the single digits, and these are just going up 1 hour each time. I mean, everything's going to be piled all together like right around here, and it's going to be kind of hard to see. Whereas this is going to show the same information, but spread out so it makes more sense and makes more logical sense to display. All right, let's do some axis drawing and decisions with those. So we have 3 sets of coordinate planes, and on what you need to do is draw and label the appropriate pair of axes to plot the points. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, -4, -5, -2, and 0 and 2 and 5/10. Yeah, I think for this one it makes sense to just draw much better than I draw. All right, I think it makes sense to use this because you're going to want to have a y-axis that has a positive and a negative, and an x-axis with the same. And then this way, I can use each one as one single, each one of the parts as one whole, because then I can use in between as a half for my one that I've got a half for. And I'm skipping around on these and just writing the odds on this side, just so you can get the point that I'm labeling, basically going with every line worth one whole, but try to space it out enough so we can see it, because obviously that's going to be pretty tight in through there. Okay. What about here? We've got 50, 50, 0, 0, -10, -30, -35, and 40. Yeah, again, we're going to use probably all the quadrant again, right? So all 4 quadrants. But the question gets to be, how are you going to draw them? Hang on. All right, not great, admittedly, but Again, I think what we're going to do here is now, instead of doing every one of those as 1, that's not going to make sense with what I've got here. But most of these are by 10s. I do have one that's 35. So I think that it makes the most sense to make each of the lines worth 10. So if I put 20, 40, 60 on each part here, then I'm talking about the space in between. I've got, negative 20. Let's see if I can make that smaller. Negative 40. Those are getting small. Same thing here. Negative 20, or I'm sorry, that's not negative 20, that's 20. Yeesh. And then by doing it this way, I not only, 1, have enough space for all those points, since they're fairly large ones, but 2, I can still show something like here where it's at negative 35. I can just do that in between. Let's see, negative 35 would be over here. So 10, 20, 30, 5 would be in between. And then up 40. Yeah, so makes plotting that pretty easy. What about this one here? Yeah, you're gonna need to do this one at least in halves. Let me see if I can make it so it's easier to see. Hang on. Oh, that's so much better. Okay. I can even almost draw on the line. This mouse is just not super great at tracking. All right. So since we've got fourths for a lot of these and we got halves, it looks like we've got negative 1 1/4. Looks like we need at least, what, negative 1 1/4 is the same as 5/4, right? So I need at least 5/4. So if I label every one of these as a fourth, it should make it a little bit easier. All right, I'm going to do this one at 2/4 since I've got a bunch right above it and I don't want to cram everything in. This will be 4/4. Really doesn't matter that I'm skipping those other in a different way. We're still doing each one of these lines as 1/4. So like the 1/4 and 3/4, it's going to go here. What about this one? Negative 5/4, 1/2. Which quadrant? Yeah, it's going to end up in the second quadrant, right? So if I go over to the negative 5/4 and I go up 1/2, which is 2/4, that should be there. What about this one? Negative 1 1/4 and negative 3/4. Yeah, that goes in the third quadrant here. So negative 1 1/4, that's the same as negative 5/4, and I need to go down to negative 3/4. That'll be my C. And then this one does conveniently end up over here. So I got to go over 1/4, then down 1/2, which is right, well, it's right here. It's just going to cover that up a little bit. Okay. So the point is with this is using what you've got for information wise to help you figure out your scale for your axes, because you don't want to make it so that, you know, the one what we used for the one where you had 50s and such and other 10s, that scale is not going to work to try and plot all of these fractions on. You're not going to be able to see anything. So you got to make sure that you're using a scale that makes sense with what you're trying to show. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to do something that's positively amazing. So you should see a question pop up here in a second where you are going to actually be able to interact with this. And what's going to happen is you're going to enter the maze where it has you started, and then go through and label each of your points. Let me show you what that looks like. So you're going to do just like that they've got here. You're going to make a line. So you click your little line here, and I'm going to go from here to right in the center. And then I'm going to click again. Okay, then what you're going to do at the end of this is you're going to just pick 2 of the points, and your next question is going to pop up here is going to be what's the same about 2 of the points that you picked. Yeah, so what you should have found is that 2 of the points that you picked should have had either the X or the Y the same. Like here, B and C are going to have the same Y, right? Because they're both going from, or they're both, I'm sorry, they'll have the same X. We're changing Y because it's going up or down, but we're using the same X for both. Whereas all of these, C, D, and E, in my example here, they all have the same Y, and it's X that changes every time. So they've got one of the 2 points in common. So the 2 points next to each other are going to have one, either the X or the Y is the same because they're in a straight line and it's perpendicular. All right, I hope you made it through that. So when plotting things like -2, 3, and 5, 7, how many units across would you make the X and the Y axis? Well, I'm going to look first at my smallest of my x-axis. That's a -2 to 5. So I need to make it at least 7 units across, right? And I may have like 0 over here, -2 here, and then 5 over here. What about if I go up and down? Yeah, I don't need to worry about the third or the fourth quadrant. I'm just going to go straight up, right? I got to go up at least to 7. And that's all I need to do. Simple. What about plotting something like 1 and 75/100ths, -5/10ths, and -2 and 25/100ths, and 1 and 5/10ths? Is it going to use the same units here? No, you're not. And in fact, here it's going to be a little bit different because you're going to need something that does dip down into that other quadrant, into the third and fourth quadrant, because we do have a -y. And since we've got a negative and a positive X and a negative and a positive Y, it's going to go across. And you're not going to do something where you're going to have most of the units labeled at least in 25/100ths each time, right? Because you're using 25/100ths as kind of like a small part for each of these. What about this one? -3, 40, and 4, -60. Yeah, so this would be one of those weird ones where you probably would do something where you'd have like individual units across. So like this would be -1. This would be 1. And you really only have to go up to like 4, right? But your y-axis is going to be quite different. You're probably going to use a much larger space, or you're going to make each one worth 10 at a time, right? To account so it's not so much. And in that case, typically if you're going to do something like that, you're going to be explaining what each of those axes are, like hours or days or something like that. Okay, whoa! It's time to go. I'm sure you're still playing with the other part, and enjoy as much as you can. I will see you later. Thanks.